Welcome back to Season 2 of In the Middle of It, a podcast about participation culture.
Join us out in the field as we explore what it really takes to grow participation culture in communities.
I'm Cissy Rock.
I'm Lucy-Mary Mulholland.
And I'm Duncan Matthews. In the Middle of It, Season 2 starts now.
Let's go.
So now might be a really good time for us to get hold of some of the things that we've learned, some of the things we still want to learn.
What are you counting, depending on the context, can mean totally different things.
I think it's a really interesting idea, that expanding that sense of what is wealth.
This is called In the Middle of It, but we actually are in the middle of it. And as we come to the end of being in the middle of it, we become to the beginning of being towards the end of it.
Yep.
So now might be a really good time for us to get hold of some of the things that we've learned, some of the things we still want to learn, and some of the things that we've given up learning.
Yes, that was my favourite.
Okay, well, let's start here. What have you given up learning, Duncan?
Well, I think riffing off this season, we've given up trying to use counts or quantitative measures to understand what's happening on the ground. I think we know that it just doesn't work. And I think we know that even when you count stuff, it's hard to know what you're counting. A particular example that sticks out for me is one of our locations where they could provide some events and so like how many people showed up. But then we also know that the venue that they used would have reported the people that showed up there for their funding applications or funding report back. So, when you're counting, what are you actually counting? Does that counting mean anything? And I think a lot of it gets back to no, that counting doesn't mean a lot because depending on the context, those numbers mean different things.
You've given up counting numbers.
Yes.
I've given up being anxious about the fact that we're going to give up counting numbers.
Great.
Because I think that that's one of the pressures that I felt, signing the contract, saying we'll do A, B, C, and D, and then realising, actually, I think we haven't allowed enough time for this. I can't believe that we thought we'd be able to test this in a year.
Yep. You have to do things to make stuff statistically meaningful. And we can't prove anything about participation in a before and after sense because what are you counting, depending on the context, can mean totally different things.
And one of the things that we had been talking about was the space between reflective practice and evaluation, that distance travelled.
Yes, distance travelled.
And I think that might be one of the things that we end up learning more about, like how to capture some of that distance travelled and be able to report that as a way of demonstrating what we think is going on through what we're doing.
Yeah, well, across a range of my different roles, I have lots of opportunities to observe or participate in different ways of observing and capturing that distance travelled, of which we're trialling a few here, but I think there's more trialling to be done.
I was just thinking about this project that I did last year where we, the people who were delivering it, felt pretty good about it and thought we'd created quite a lot of community engagement and momentum over a summer in quite a short amount of time using local people running small events. But my sense is the people that contracted us, who weren't a government agency but were a fund holder, felt disappointed. Their expectations were so much bigger. I mean, at one point, one of the women said to me, but you haven't talked to X in the community and you haven't talked to Y in the community. It's like, wow, we've got to start somewhere. Like, this is actually going to be a really big project if you think we're going to engage every single person in the community. And so I wonder about expectations here, like us learning about whose expectations we're meeting. I know that you've done some interviews halfway through, and in one neighbourhood we knew someone who happened to live in it, and they said to us, well, nothing's happened.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, we know that that's not true because we've seen all the stuff that's happened. So, how do we manage different perspectives, different expectations, different views? Like, there isn't a truth.
That's right. That is a perspective for lots of community people who are contributing. It's like, well, can't you understand the value of my work? I'm here. I'm giving up my time. I'm doing this because I'm passionate, because I want to do stuff for my community. And it's often one of the things I say, people hate doing budgets with funding applications, just to change the story a little bit. But if you kind of say, well, actually a budget is just a different way of telling the story that you've put in your funding application, that will resonate with different people. That helps to kind of bridge the differences in understanding or differences in preferences of communication style or
Yeah, I was thinking about money when you were talking about that. I was thinking about, someone says, oh, they're paid $100 an hour. They should be doing A, B, C, and D. And someone else was saying, why aren't you charging $225 an hour? And someone else is saying, I'd do that for $20 an hour. But, it's all depends really on your experiences with money and what you're prepared to pay, what you expect to pay, what you think is overpriced. A lot of money has gone into this pilot, depending on your perspective. But from my point of view, it feels like a good chunk of money has gone into this pilot. And I notice that pressure on me too, to sort of imagine that this is public money and that we've really got to be doing our best and really spending that wisely.
I agree. And I like what you were saying, Duncan, as well about budget as a way of telling a story. I was just thinking with one of our teams, we've started playing with this idea of making a budget as a way of reflecting on what's showing up in the community and how to respond to that. It's kind of a new thing we're trying out. But just that idea of at the beginning of the month, pausing and reflecting, where do we want to create little pockets of money so that we can put it's like adding some water to the soil or whatever. We can see that there's something trying to grow here. So we make sure we want to put $50 aside for that, or we want to make sure that we've always got space to support things that are new and emerging. So we haven't locked everything into place. So we make sure we've got a little bit set aside for that. And I think it's been quite helpful as a reflective practice for actually tuning into what's live every month within the community.
Because I think you were telling me about in one of the locations, Cooking Club, where at the moment it's totally funded through the pilot, but actually to make it sustainable, there needs to be a cost attached to it. People need to pay $10 or something to come along to the Cooking Club, and how that might actually mean that people don't come to the Cooking Club. And so then I say, well, was it an idea that was ever going to have legs in the first place if it's not something that people are making a contribution towards?
Yeah, I think it's a good test in a way. Sometimes when we bring money into the conversation, it really tests our assumptions, right, around how people value things or where we should continue putting our energy or not, or being able to see into the future, like you said, that kind of sustainability of something. I think it can be such a square conversation, but it also can be quite a circular conversation, right, of actually reflecting and tuning in.
Because how would we analyse a situation like that together? Like if we're going to grapple with this idea, it's an activity, it's totally 100% funded by the pilot. People are coming along, they're making friends, they're getting to cook, eat together, and this is great. However, for it to keep on existing, we're going to have to charge people $10, and some people won't come because of that. What's our analysis of that situation?
I think I reflect back to our conversation about, is this benevolence and charity or is it participation? Because participation is about bringing your contributions together and getting going together rather than it is about one group of people doing something for another group of people. And if the Cooking Club is of so little value to you that it's not worth $10 or bringing along some food to share together for a shared meal, then you're not valuing that chance to participate.
But maybe that's where you're
too cut and dry?
No, yeah, or maybe that's the bit in the middle.
Yeah.
You go, oh, okay, let's not charge money, but let's have a koha.
Yeah.
So you can bring money if you want, or you can bring ingredients, and we'll just make do with what we have. We're all volunteers here, so the contribution is voluntary for us to be here. Like that could be a midway point.
That's nice. And maybe as well, even looking at adapting the type of event. It reminds me of another project you were telling us about where they, instead of sort of a cooking club, it was more like a meal prep club where everyone brought together all the ingredients for what they wanted to cook for the week and just cooked together in a big community kitchen, and then they took home all their meal prep for the week. So it was already connected with something they were doing in their lives or wanted to do more of, but they saw opportunity to come together and do it together, and it didn't require any resource because they're all bringing their own bits and pieces.
But what's the mindset that supports that?
I think it's that co-producing thing, that we're here to co-create, co-produce this event. It's not being put on for us. We're not paying a ticket to attend. We're all bringing the offerings and taking away what we generate together. It's got more of a horizontal kind of level thing rather than a power hierarchical structure to it.
Yeah, I think it's just requires a bit of letting go of the idea of owning or the idea of this food is mine, that food is yours. I made a meat-based lasagna and that's more valuable than your vegetarian one because meat costs more. You know, all these little things that we get into our heads a little bit about. It takes a lot to let go of that and understand value in more than just what I've paid for something.
So, is this a learning Is this an emerging learning for us or an area we want to apply more learning to?
I think it's a challenge, actually, for how we get going with this with people on the ground.
Yeah, because I really want to stay away from being too romantic. You know, this idea of, we're all, like I think there's realities on the ground. And, I've even listened to some of my own examples. Like I did this example about a pizza oven.
Yes.
And then I was thinking like,
how out of touch am I?
Yes. No, I did think that. I thought about when I was living in New Zealand with my 3 kids, no one had a pizza oven, but it was probably someone burning a fire somewhere that was still annoying, or a dog barking, or my kids playing their PlayStation till 3 a.m, vibrating through the whole neighbourhood. So I think those sort of follies of the left, or what do they call them, Chardonnay politics, we've got to be mindful of how people live, how much time they've got, what's important to them, and what sits in river cottage territory and what sits in real life.
Yeah, I think that's been a big learning for me in the sense of noticing my bias and tendency towards more creative pursuits. And Wellsford's really helped me see one of the things that's just bubbled up recently, which really seems to have buzz around it, is sport, which to me I always sort of shy away from because I'm not a sport person. And for me it feels inherently kind of competitive and what we're trying to move away from and less collaborative and all sort of stuff. But again, it's like the bouncy castle thing is like, is there a way of doing sport in a way that makes space for multiple contributions, people taking a sense of shared ownership in that, not just having one leader, but things starting small and grassroots? And, is there ways of doing that? And so they're experimenting with this idea of softball. There's this real buzz around softball, but they think, okay, maybe we could just trial it real low key to start with, real low key vibes, and really make use of the time afterwards in the kind of local club rooms to have some hot chips together and have a chat and not come up with a club name, but just say, we're setting up a softball club. Do people want to join? And then let a name emerge organically. Are there ways of shaping that? So I think I've had to let go of that because I naturally am not a sporty person. And I have to remember, there's all these ways into participation culture, not just through the routes that I find comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Or this could be a very short podcast.
I was going to say, what was the question?
It's about our learning.
Yeah.
Challenges, unlearn, relearn.
Yeah, I think the level of unlearning required has probably been a surprise to me. Getting away from our default models and unlearning some really quite deeply ingrained things has been our learning. Much more unlearning is required on people to get going with that than I sort of realised.
I was listening to someone talking about the axis that the system spins on. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, if we've got representative democracy and we've got benevolence as these strong ways that the world spins, it's actually harder, isn't it, to unlearn something than it is to just learn. Mm-hmm. Because you've got to do 2 things, unlearn and then I've got to learn on top of the unlearning. I think we talked about before when we were talking about groups of people and 3 people doing 10 hours. One of my learnings has been how much you can actually expect from a group of people who are hitting the ground running, what really can be produced, what can be generated, and how maybe now, 2/3 of the way in, we can start to see a shift much more towards engagement. Because of the research, the setting up, the relationships are starting to be formed. And maybe that's something I'd be looking for as a learning is how far into process can we start to see A happening? Do we start to expect B to be happening? Just so that we've got a sense of the rhythm of the participation culture process.
Yeah, again, it goes back to those, like the signs, like how do we know we're shifting from one stage to the next, or like there's a maturing of the process because we're seeing suddenly now this thing emerging in the work or in the system, or something dropping out, not happening anymore.
And if we look back to the very beginning, that first time we're driving down to run our training in Glenview or Hoonhay, Rowley or up in Wellsford, that first time we meet people, we sit down, we do those mapping exercises, to now, that's when we can probably see the things that are springing up. We've actually had no weavers drop out. I was pretty sure 1 or 2 people would.
Yeah.
In fact, we're bringing everyone
together
and everyone's up for that.
True.
What's this question here? Our weavers have many different approaches to money. What does fairness look like? Should we talk about how we handle money in this project? Because money is often an awkward thing to talk about.
Yeah, I think money causes a lot of drama in community work. People are jealous of who the fund holding organisation is, or some people hold very tightly onto money, whereas other people want to spend it freely and quickly to get the most benefit out of it. And we've certainly seen that in this project. One thing we did early on was to give all of our weavers a payment card to prevent all those sort of things around having to claim receipts or the hardship that can put on people who, when they're having to subsidise the work with their own money, even if only on a temporary basis. We tried to put some quite clear rules around use of the card. We wanted to make money freely available, but make the weavers accountable to each other in their own small groups. So when they're spending money, they're actually spending money which has been allocated to their collective group to use for the benefit of their region. It's not their money, it's not our money, it's the weavers' money.
It was important for us that the weavers had access to funds.
Mm-hmm.
Important to us that weavers had access to funds, but also they felt discretion over the funds. Like they weren't having to ask every time they wanted to spend. It's quite different. Oh, can I go spend $20? Versus, by the way, I'm spending $2 for the group. It's slightly different, but I think it's quite, I'm going to use that not so great word, empowering. But, suddenly you're like, oh, well, I've got this putia that I have shared ownership of to benefit my community, and I don't have to go ask to use it, but I do need to be confident that everyone who's working with me here will be in agreement that this $20 was the right thing to do.
And quite often we're not just talking about $20, we're talking about a couple of $100.
Well, sometimes it's a couple of $100, sometimes it's $5. But yeah. I think people come in with very different approaches to money. We see that all the time. You can have...
Or even us three probably have different.
Yeah.
Well, definitely, actually, I'm looking at me and Duncan. We have very different approaches to money.
That's its own podcast. We have experienced some issues with the way we've made money accessible through this project to weavers and to others. And I think the important part is not just sort of shying away or trying to brush it under the cover or individualizing the blame for some of those behaviours. It's been much more effective for us to work to address and set expectations of behaviour around money that help people to learn and grow, particularly on this topic, which we don't learn in school. Often we may not have great role models for, and people don't like talking about it. And that's working? ? Maybe remains to be seen.
Well, look, our relationship started on me asking you to help me.
Yeah.
With money.
True.
I couldn't manage it properly. I couldn't put a budget together and I needed some help.
Yes.
So I think, none of us are immune to dealing with money. And then we're in these roles. We didn't want people to have to underwrite it. We've put these cards in. On the whole, I think we're pretty happy with the system.
Yeah.
We could do a shout out to Emerge.
We could do a shout out to Emerge.
Yeah, because they're a new
startup. You do have to be a registered company to use it.
How great is it to be a weaver in Christchurch with a card on your phone so you can go and buy, oh God, I've just forgot to get some cardboard, or, you're free. You're not having to use your own cash to do that, and to have a budget where you can work out what's important to your community right now.
And I think as well, something that really helps you to feel yourself in that role of weaver, which I think has got that real quality of manaakitanga, of being able to host conversations. And so to be able to meet someone at the event who wants to set up this frisbee golf and say, like, do you want some help with that idea? We could go out for coffee next week and we have a chat about it. To be able to offer that space of hospitality, to have those types of conversations, I think is really... I've noticed in roles when I've been that weaver and haven't had that budget, how that sense of scarcity, I feel that I can't hold that sort of generous hosting hospitality space with members of the community. I have to ask every time, and how that kind of dampens my sense of my role.
Yeah, I agree. And I reckon err on the side of generosity if you can. There is something about money that brings out our value base and probably says a lot about our privilege. I want everyone to have a basic income. I want there to be enough for everyone to live off, vote Cissy Rock. But I don't think that that's happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important that we share what we do have in community so that we're not just measuring our standard of living by our income, but by the quality of the relationships and the connections we have. I don't look back in the times when I was really poor and I was at Play Centre, and a group of us would put our gold coins together and buy hot chips and sit in the park and our kids would play, and that was one of the most rewarding, exciting, delicious experiences I've had. So I just want us to maybe alter our mindset around what abundance and connection and richness looks like. But I say that as a very privileged Pākehā woman who does have enough money to pay my parking fines and not end up in court.
I think that's a really interesting idea, that expanding that sense of what is wealth. That it's at the moment, it's very much a dollar sign, But I think what we're maybe exploring in this project is through growing all these relationships and connections, we're actually growing genuine wealth in a community, which is wealth in terms of sharing resources. We're suddenly becoming wealthier because we don't all have to buy things individually, or through being able to call on a neighbour to help with babysitting when you're stuck. That's a wealth thing that we're not having to spend money on, that we're actually growing a sense of a different form of wealth through social connections.
Being able to have a conversation with someone and not feeling so lonely.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my worst fear, not having someone to talk to.
Sometimes it's my fear having to talk to people. So.
There you go. There you go.
I think my fear is that sense of total reliance. Living through the Christchurch earthquakes and seeing within a couple of days, suddenly the petrol stations are empty and the supermarket shelves are empty. And suddenly you're like, oh my God, we're so vulnerable, really. And I think when I think about this work, the more I have relationships with neighbours and, maybe someone's got a barbecue down the road and we can all share that, or someone's got a spring on their property that they're happy for people to come and fill up their water bottles. Like those things is what gives me a sense of I don't know what the word is, security or belongingness or safety in a place.
Security beyond the veneer.
Yeah.
And I think COVID, for not everyone, but for some people, created this moment where we started to question what really is important. I think a lot of parents and children experienced a quality of relationships they hadn't been able to have because of working, not all, but some. Apparently there's a whole lot of dogs that now cannot be left alone because they spend so much more time with their owners. And I do appreciate all the people that worked really hard during COVID, particularly supermarket workers who now can't even strike for better working conditions without being given notice that their employment might be finished. So how quickly we forget. But I think, what do they call that? The zeitgeist? The zeitgeist?
Zeitgeist?
Yeah, that's the sort of flavour of the time, is it? And there was a flavour of the time during COVID around people really starting to value different things and appreciate different things in their life. And I thought that might actually be a moment where the impossible became possible. But that was, again, a moment where we needed speed, we needed momentum, because that moment passed and here we are again.
The magnet has sucked us back.
Very much.
But we've had that experience, I think there's something powerful about having had a lived experience of something, that you can call on that when you're talking with people and you're trying to plant that seed of potential. And you're like, remember how that felt? I think lived experience can be powerful still for helping imagine a different future.
Talking of imagining a different future, what is going to be left after us? AC, after Cissy, after the end of this 12-month pilot. We know there's a few...
Well, it's a little bit naughty to say after Cissy.
Sorry.
Because, I kind of like that. But actually, really, it's the weavers who are there doing the work. And I'd like to say, I'm hoping that there is enough time for this to get hold. Maybe that's the biggest learning I've had, is more time is needed. But even if we finish in February and there is no more resourcing, I'm hoping there's some relationships that are left, even if it's just one or two, that are generating something different in the community.
Yeah, I remember hearing it in one of our Hoon Hey rally training sessions where we asked that question, what would success look like at the end of this project? And I think one of them did say, us as weavers still connecting with each other. And I thought, that's pretty powerful if those relationships are still there.
Well, as the evaluator, what are you looking for?
I'm really interested in your idea of a field guide, Cissy. And I think we could spend a whole nother episode talking about the participatory cities approach. They didn't call it a field guide. They called it something else. But, we have community-led development principles. We have this 60-page illustrated guide to participatory city from the UK. But I would still struggle to pick up those and know how to get going. And that's fine, community-led development principles, they are principles. So, they're not going to be a step-by-step guide. But I always think there's place for something a lot more, Neighbours Aotearoa has their toolkits for particular events or ideas to get going, whether it's in your apartment building, around your block, etc. And I think there's a real strong place for those to actually amp up. Here is some of the, not step-by-step instructions, but really laying out a path for people in a way that hasn't been done before, which balances this is the one and only way to do things with enough steerance, guidance, and instilling enough confidence by providing that people can actually get past those first few barriers of getting going.
Yeah, I've sort of got this picture of, this is a starting point. Might take you here, might take you here, might take you here. And if it takes you here, this is what you can do. Look, this is actually good for no matter where it takes you.
Is it one of those like choose your own?
Yeah, choose your own adventure books. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, except you can't.
Happens, go to B.
You can't actually choose it until you do it.
Right.
Yeah, you don't know what the next choice is until you've done choice 1 or 2.
That's cool because I imagine it rather than a sort of a linear book of step 1, step 2, step 3. In my mind, it's more of that kind of like an unfolding web. Back to that the mushroom mycelium, this kind of unfolding multiple pathways.
Yeah,
that's going in different directions and isn't a linear.
like a child's book that pops up.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, he's already going. Look at the publishing cost.
It's going to be digital. Come on.
Oh, it's going to be digital.
What a place to end season 2 on.
Oh, that went really quickly.
It did. We're sharpening our pencils to put together season 3 of this podcast.
Yeah.
Season 3 of
In the middle of it.
I just want to say something. Yeah. At the very beginning, when Lucy-Mary came on board, she wasn't pregnant.
Right.
So about 2 weeks later, I think she got pregnant, right?
Yeah.
I think there's something about us being 2/3 of the way through, also being close to the gestation of human life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lucy-Mary holding that theme for us. So
very literally.
something new has been created anyway during this time, right?
Yeah. That's true.
And so, look, sharpen our pencils, get together for season 3. Chances are Lucy-Mary won't be with us.
That's right. Yeah. I'm going to duck out. But it's a nice moment to mark that in time. Hey, that sense of what am I stepping out of and what will continue on. And I think as well, being pregnant and growing this child, it's really brought to light for me that sense of intergenerationalness of this work and kind of why we're doing this, right? Part of it is for the next generation about shifting a culture that really supports and uffies the next generation.
So as we come to the end of season 2, it's over and out from me, Cissy Rock.
It's been awesome being with you guys, having this corridor. I think every time we've come together, it's made me deepen my appreciation for this work. So it's been awesome. Thank you, guys.
It's been so great to have you with us, not just in the podcast, but IRL, as we've done this mahi over the last few months. And it is truly part of our evaluation and learning together through some of these conversations.
So thank you very much, Lucy-Mary.
Thank you, guys.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.
Bye.
Thanks goes to 104.6 Planet FM Community Access Radio Auckland for their excellent recording studio and guidance in producing this podcast. The music is Pistoriosis by Shane Ivers of soundmanmusic.com, Mal Joannison for bringing together draft episodes, Mish Maskol for their audio engineering expertise, and our weavers Libby, Jalen, Charles, Tui, Nay, Holly, Lisa, Ray and Carol.
With additional music by Snake and Bongo and Afrobot. Final sound production and mix by Barney Duncan.